we looking? How we looking? How we sounding? How we sounding? Just gonna make sure we're good. Don't want to get this started if I'm not even audible. Yeah, there is a lot to react to. Okay, what's good? It's Woog. Uh, there was one piece of breaking news that I'm gonna get into, and then there are some additional Canelo shenanigans surrounding who he might or might not fight next. And I actually want to start with the news that has broken, basically a fight that is taking place rather than what might or might not take place. But we're going to cover both. We're going to talk some Gervonta Tank Davis versus Frank Martin. This was just announced. It was announced earlier today. I think it was first Mike Coppinger, who I saw reported first. I think the others, such as Michael Benson and other, prominent boxing voices, also had mentioned the fight taking place. So I'm just gonna get one more technical thing in order. And okay. So yeah, this one is actually pretty exciting in terms of talking some Tank Davis versus. I didn't see this one coming with Frank Martin. I mean, if you look at Tank Davis's, well, first, okay, so the news that broke is that Gervonta Davis's next fight is going to be against Frank Martin, and this is said to take place late spring, early summer, and you know, okay, there was a lot of speculation. People were talking about Conor Benn and, somehow them making Tank Davis versus Conor Benn a possibility. I never thought that that was a real possibility. Um, Not only weight wise, but Conor Benn hasn't really blown up as a name in the United States, and he has not yet been cleared to fight in the UK. So although it might have sounded interesting, I just didn't think that that was a real possibility as much as, Eddie Hearn and Matchroom would want it to be a possibility. But this was a little bit of a curveball because Frank Martin isn't he's not a big name. And I'm thinking, why would Tank Davis decide to go in this direction when Frank Martin's stock isn't even that high right now? Like, I feel like his stock was even higher before his last fight against Harvatunian, where Frank Martin had to, really come on late to get the decision win. It was a tough fight for Frank Martin. And then when he was said to be fighting Shakur Stevenson, he pulled out of the fight, and I feel like his reputation somewhat took a hit just because optics matter. And in this case, it looked like Frank Martin decided against it after thinking about it. Even if that wasn't what happened, to the to the boxing audience who isn't in all of these private discussions and negotiations, it just appeared like he thought about it and said, I would rather not fight Shakur Stevenson at this juncture. Again, fair or not, that was kind of the perception. So Frank Martin, just in terms of his reputation's trajectory, isn't even at peak. It's not like he's a fighter who's coming off a hot win. Like, sometimes what you'll see is you'll see a decent to moderately good fighter pick up a signature win, and then the star fighter says, okay, I'll fight that guy, because he just picked up a significant win. For example, when Canelo fought Austin Trout was, coming off of a win against Miguel Cotto. When Floyd Mayweather fought Robert Guerrero, the Ghost, that was in the beginning, I believe, of his new Showtime contract when he first went from HBO to Showtime. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But when Floyd fought Robert Guerrero, the Ghost was coming off a win against Andre Berto. So it's like, okay, yeah, I'll fight you. Or even in the case of Marcos Maidana was pretty much coming off of that win against Adrian Broner, and Floyd Mayweather's like, okay, you're kind of hot right now. Let's make you my next opponent. Frank Martin doesn't have any of these things going right now. I'm wondering, and also, is Tank choosing Frank Martin because he thinks that this is a fight that is the right time to take it because maybe Frank Martin isn't as good as he's going to be in 2 years, even though it's not like Frank Martin's in his early 20s. He's, I believe, in his later 20s, right? I'll give you the exact number. He's 29 years old right now. He's older than a lot of champions. Devin Haney's like 25. So is Gervonta Davis saying, I see Frank Martin going on to do good things, so let me fight him and beat him now so that as Frank Martin's career continues, this win ends up aging well. I don't even know if Tank Davis is making that calculation. Like, I don't know if when he fought Mario Barrios up at 140, he was thinking, you know what, maybe this is somebody who one day is going to beat Yordenis Ugas, or is going to hang in there and fight a pretty competitive 12 rounds with Keith Thurman. I don't think that was what went into the decision to fight Frank Martin. So he's an undefeated fighter. As I said, he's 29 years old. I would say that his best win is probably that win against Michel Rivera, a win that has aged pretty well because, you know, Michel Rivera tested positive for PEDs. For those of you that don't know, Michel Rivera is the Muhammad Ali lookalike. The haircut, trunks, somewhat style. But he's the Ali lookalike who recently, after testing positive for PEDs, after fighting Frank Martin and losing via clear decision, again, this was an impressive win for Frank Martin, Rivera went up and he recently beat Sergey Lipinets up at 140. So that is a win that's aging well for Frank Martin. Besides that, I would say maybe his stoppage over Jackson Mariñez, that was a pretty good win, even though Mariñez hasn't looked good since he looked good against Raleigh Romero. But yeah, I don't see how strategically this makes sense for Tank Davis. Now, from a fight fan's perspective, Franco H is in the house. What's going on? Yeah, thank you for coming through. Sup Swoles is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Yeah. And I said, thank you for coming through the Sup Swoles as if I didn't text him like 5 minutes before jumping on the live. Like, hey, I'm about to go live in light of this boxing news. But yeah, thanks. Heck yeah. Thanks for coming in anyway, fam. So strategically, it doesn't make a ton of sense, but from a fight fan's perspective, this is golden, right? Like Gervonta Davis was in legal trouble, which kept him out of the ring for the second half of 2023. And so he's returning to the ring to fight a legitimate, bona fide top 10, you could even say maybe top 8 lightweight in the game. Again, undefeated. He's in his, physical prime, 29 years old. So unless there's some catch weight clause or, rehydration clause that I'm not aware about, this is one of the best matchups in terms of fans getting excited about it. Like, were we excited when they, circled back to make Tank versus Raleigh Romero? I wasn't. Or when, Raleigh Romero hit the legal allegation and Isak Cruz, Pitbull, stepped in and then they were making Tank Davis versus Pitbull. I wasn't fired up about that. Like at the time, Pitbull, he was seen as being pretty good, but having a lot of flaws, not being a good defensive fighter. So on paper, it wasn't a great matchup. I can't think of the last time, besides obviously Ryan Garcia, that I was excited about a Tank Davis matchup. Hector Garcia, not so much. Decent fighter, but he was coming up from 130 to fight Tank at 135. Leo Santa Cruz was a little interesting, but 130 was never Leo Santa Cruz's best division. Jay Foreman is in the house. Yeah, it is about time I got back on the live. Thank you. Heck yeah. Benjamin Tucker, what's up, cousin? Is in the house. Yeah, we were just talking boxing on the phone the other day. But yeah, Frank Martin didn't look good against Haratunian. You're right. He didn't look his best. And yeah, Frank Martin had to rally and finish strong to even really have a good shot at winning that one on the cards. But he looked really good before that. Energy is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Yeah, we're going to talk about that energy. I'm going to get to Canelo next. First, I'm going to talk Tank Davis versus Frank Martin matchup. Then we're going to get into the Canelo chaos, if you will. So this is the last time besides, Ryan Garcia, but before that, again, Leo Santa Cruz, not so much. A lot of the fighters before that, not so much, just in terms of what the matchup looks like on paper. Like Tank Davis is going to be giving up a couple inches here. Frank Martin's about 5'8". Tank is about somewhere between 5'5" and 5'6". Frank Martin is also a southpaw, like Tank Davis, but it's not like Tank Davis hasn't fought a southpaw before. Um, but this is an interesting matchup. Of course, you've got to favor Tank going into this one. But again, I just want to take this moment because we're always so quick to criticize fighters when they take a kind of like a bum matchup where it's like, you're fighting that guy. I mean, I feel like there's been so many times when some superstar fighter, schedules his next match. It's almost like I have to convince myself to get excited about it. It doesn't naturally excite me. This one is naturally interesting. Of course, it's not one of the top 3 to 5 fights you would want to see Tank in. Who would those opponents be? Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, Vasily Lomachenko. Those would probably be the top 3 guys we'd want to see Tank fight. So Teofimo Lopez would be, in that top 4. So it's not one of those guys. But right outside of that, Frank Martin's got to be right there. You know what I mean? So I like this one. And they're both going to be coming off of relatively long layoffs. Frank Martin's last fight was July of last year. So again, if they schedule this for late spring, early summer, we're going to be talking 10 to 11 months out of the ring. Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia. When was that? Was that April? Was it April or June? I think it was April, but let me know if you know. I don't want to bore you with my Google search to fact check myself. But let's just say it was April. It's going to be a little over a year since Tank's last fight. So do you expect him to look as sharp and at his absolute best when he enters that fight against Frank Martin? Again, these are both guys in their late 20s. So let's take the time to applaud Tank Davis for taking this fight. Even if you do think that you saw some vulnerability or some stylistic holes in Frank Martin's game, I ain't mad at this one. Just like, if somebody was going to fight Shakur Stevenson now, after seeing how much of a drag that last, Shakur Stevenson versus Edwin De Los Santos fight was, it's like, well, damn, you're still going to go in there and fight Shakur Stevenson. Same thing with whoever fights Edwin De Los Santos next. It's like, he's still a dangerous guy with very fast hands. And, there's a reason why Shakur Stevenson wasn't gung-ho about jumping into the pocket with the guy. So, yeah, again, I'm not going to make too much of Frank Martin having a more difficult than anticipated fight against Haratunian. Like, we could look at any superstar or moderate star and look at their track record, and we could all find that fight that ended up being way tougher for that opponent than we thought that it was going to be. There's always that fight or two where it's like, oh man, he's really struggling with somebody who I expected him to more or less just dominate or walk over. Yeah. So I'm going to chalk this one up to that. Let's see. I'm going to get it. MAW is in the house. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Smash that like button. Franco H said, if we are not getting Tank versus Haney or Shakur, Frank Martin is the next best option. Yeah, a quality fighter. Like, we were excited when they were making that, or at least announcing Shakur Stevenson versus Frank Martin. I was excited about that one. So if I could get excited about that, how could I not get excited about Tank Davis, who I see as being, let's keep it real. I mean, at least in my opinion, I look at Tank, he might not be the best fighter at lightweight or, and at 140, just a combination of those divisions. But then again, he really might be the best out of all these guys. But he, to me, is the most exciting fighter. I just feel like the element of danger is ever present at every moment in Tank Davis fights. He, unlike, I look at Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson as probably being more reliable round winners, just round over round over round. You could even throw Lomachenko in that, group. Round over round, he's tough to win rounds against. A little easier as he's gotten older, Lomachenko, right? But Tank Davis will give up a couple rounds to knock you out in the middle rounds. Like, we saw Rolly Romero win multiple rounds against Tank. Hector Garcia won multiple rounds against Tank. Leo Santa Cruz won multiple rounds. Esau Cruz almost won the fight against Tank, even though I put an asterisk by that one because I feel like there was a significant injury that hampered Tank Davis's performance in that one. But he'll give up some rounds. So I wouldn't be surprised, for instance, if Frank Martin, after 5 rounds, is up 3 rounds to 2 I wouldn't be too surprised. Again, he's got the length on Tank, and he's going to be boxing pretty intelligently. Tank is going to wait for his moments, I'm sure, to make something big happen. Let's see. Energy said Tank is yet to fight a big name at lightweight. So unless you consider Isaac Cruz a big name, like, I wouldn't be mad at seeing Isaac Cruz in a lightweight top 10. To me, he hasn't done enough to prove it. And I would like to see him against, damn, he's going to be fighting Raleigh Romero at 140 next. I think a lot of people looked at that matchup and didn't consider that Raleigh is, bigger than Isaac Cruz and is at 140, and Isaac Cruz isn't. Isaac Cruz is a small lightweight going up to fight Raleigh at 140. So even if you were to look at that as being a stylistically bad matchup for Raleigh, if you consider the size, maybe that evens things out a little bit. I don't know. I have to think a little bit more about that. But yeah, this is certainly the best lightweight. Well, let me not do that to Ryan Garcia. And Ryan Garcia, he was technically at 140, but he wasn't established or a proven 140 guy. He was just fighting Fortuna up there. He was fighting Emmanuel Tego up there, but he wasn't a bona fide 140 guy. He was just a guy who was too big to fight at lightweight anymore, and still picking on 130, 126 guys and bringing them up to 140. But in terms of name recognition, obviously Ryan Garcia is a star, but just in terms of, being at your best and, fighting at lightweight, competing at the division, again, assuming that there are no weight related shenanigans in this Tank Davis versus Frank Martin fight. If it is truly on the up and up, yeah, this is a very good matchup. And this is going to be for Tank Davis's WBA lightweight title. If you're wondering how the hell did Tank Davis end up with a WBA lightweight title? Well, he's had that lesser WBA lightweight belt for like multiple years now. And since Devin Haney vacated, his belts and is up at 140, the championship at 135 is now splintered, and Tank Davis has been elevated to full champ status at 135. Yeah, we're gonna get into the Canelo stuff. Whoopi, thank you for coming through. Jay Foreman said it's an okay matchup, but I want to see him fight Haney or Stevenson already. Stevenson is not retiring after all, last I heard. I mean, did anybody really take that retirement seriously? I took that as seriously as I took, Teofimo Lopez when he said that he was retiring. I didn't make much of it. I think that he's truly frustrated because I truly think that Stevenson wants to fight everybody except for Devin Haney at a 30% pay split, I guess. But I get the impression that Shakur wants to smoke, and it seems like the fights that he wants aren't there. They're not available to him. And that's got to be frustrating. He's been wanting like the Lomachenko fight, and it's an appropriate fight, but instead Lomachenko is going to be fighting George Kambosos for, what is it? Either the WBO or the IBF. One of those two belts is what Lomachenko and Kambosos are going to be fighting for. So Lomachenko took that route, even though Shakur Stevenson is in his division too. Yeah, I didn't love that move. And I expect Lomachenko, if he's still Lomachenko, to beat Kambosos down pretty handily. It's like, if you're not a top-notch fighter, Jermaine Ortiz aside, I mean, we still don't know how good he is. He looked good against T.O., even though the fight didn't look good. He looked very capable against T.O., and he obviously looked very capable against Lomachenko. But if you're a tier below the elite, and Lomachenko is still Lomachenko, he's gonna put a pretty vicious beating on you. See Richard Comey, see Nakatani, you know what I mean? And I expect Kambosos to suffer a similar fate. Let's see. Do I think Martin's cardio is good? I think is one of his flaws. He hasn't proven to be able to fight a good quality hard 12 rounds. Even though, again, I think that was a 12-rounder against Michel Rivera. I don't remember him finishing weak. Did he finish in a lackluster way against Michel Rivera? Now, granted, when people are fighting a hard 12, if the fight isn't close, I could see you kind of taking your foot off the gas just a little bit, and coasting to the decision, rather than, if it's a competitive 12 rounds and you need that 11th and 12th to have a chance on the scorecards, then you've got to pretty much empty out the tank in those last couple of rounds. I don't know if Frank Martin has that type of cardio. Excuse me, I'm going to take a little sip real quick. But you know, again, these are things that we would find out. And maybe there are some things that Tank Davis sees or some things that he says, you know, Frank Martin isn't proven in this, you know, in this category or that category. Let me go ahead and see what he's really about. But it's also somewhat risky because when you don't know how good somebody is, they might end up being better than anybody could have expected. Not that I think that that's the case with Frank Martin, but again, this is a high quality fight. I would give it like a B plus matchups wise. And maybe I'm being a little rough on the grade. Some people would probably give it an A minus matchup wise. And maybe as the story is told over time and Frank Martin ends up being that guy, maybe it elevates to like an A minus. Again, it could be a fight and a win that ages really well. I'm just curious as to why Tank Davis chose, you know, that matchup out of the few that might have been available to him. But again, it's, you know, given the promotional politics, it's close to as good as you could get for Tank Davis. I would rather this one than him to fight, you know, go up and fight Conor Benn. I think Conor Benn needs to be fighting Stanionis or somebody like that at 147. Or if you're going to do 154, fight another new to 154 guy like Virgil Ortiz. But I don't think Eddie Hearn is going to put Conor Benn anywhere near Virgil anytime soon, at least. But yeah, I guess now would be a good time to pivot and talk some Canelo. So there's a lot to unpack with this one. Let's rewind a little bit to when Canelo said that he wasn't going to fight a Mexican in his next fight. So to me, that takes Munguia off the table. I see Munguia's name resurfacing, but to me, if we're going to take Canelo at his word, he ain't fighting Munguia next. He pretty much said as much. Now, David Benavidez, this is the frustrating part. To me, there are only two right answers if you're Canelo, and if you want to be considered anything but, I'm going to just throw the word out there, even though I don't use it lightly, a duck. If you don't want that to be your reputation, at least in this stage of your career, there are only two right answers. It's either David Benavidez, who is by far the most deserving of the shot. Divisionally, he's the guy, right? Like who's the best in the division? If you were to take a poll, I think I just issued a poll this morning. Who do you want to see Canelo fight next? Which isn't the exact same question, but it's close. If I were to ask who's the best at 168, not named Canelo, it's going to be David Benavidez. Even if you include Canelo, it's going to be close, which is why we want to see Canelo fight Benavidez. It's the must-see attraction in that division. And you know, I saw somebody, and I don't even know why I want to give this conversation weight, but it was on Twitter/X, and they were saying Munguia is more proven than Benavidez. I'll just leave it at that. I couldn't really take that conversation anywhere past that. Like, Munguia's best win, if you're not talking Saddam Ali or Liam Smith, is John Ryder or Derevianchenko, one of those. Benavidez is coming off of wins against Caleb Plant and Demetrius Andrade, and he beat Andre Dirrell a few years ago. And he's a two-time WBC champ. But he's the guy who Canelo needs to be fighting. The only plausible excuse or reasonable reason why Canelo wouldn't be fighting David Benavidez next is if he agrees to a legend versus legend showdown against Terrence Crawford. That's the only other fight that I would find acceptable. And the reason I would find that is as acceptable is it's like Terrence Crawford has done so much throughout his career, and he is so proven that if you were going to give anybody the benefit of the doubt to do something crazy, and I think I said this in a reaction video a few days ago, if you were going to give anybody that type of wiggle room, that type of, you know, go ahead, do whatever you want. I don't agree with it, but if you want to go up 3 divisions and fight Canelo, go ahead and do it. If you were going to give that to anybody, it's somebody like Terrence Crawford. And if it's going to be Terrence Crawford, and if he is going to dare to be great and do something where it's like, yeah, we might still favor Canelo, but it's like, damn, I got to see that though, because we know Crawford's got hands. We know he's got the IQ. We know he's got tons of ability, but he's going to be 37 years old this year. If it's not right now or close to right now, it's never. I felt the same way about Canelo versus or Crawford versus Spence at the time. I was calling it Spence versus Crawford. If it's not now, it's never, because you don't want the expiration date to have passed, right? So if Canelo's ever going to fight Terrence Crawford, it's got to be now. It's not going to be a 37-year-old, 38-year-old Terrence Crawford. So again, I wouldn't be mad at Canelo versus Crawford. And it's like, okay, if you're going to fight that little guy being Jermell Charlo, not Jamal, but Jermell Charlo at 154 coming up to 168. If you're going to do that, you might as well do that and fight that little guy, Terrence Crawford. You know what I mean? So I could make room for that in my, I guess, fighter expectations and what I want out of fighters. I could see Canelo doing that. And there's still some, but you didn't pick David Benavidez in there, but at least it's Terrence Crawford, a generational great. So again, if you're going to do generational great versus generational great, okay, let's do it. I haven't been a fan of those multi-divisional jumps. Wasn't a huge fan of Jermell jumping up to fight Canelo. Wasn't a huge fan of Guillermo Rigondeaux jumping way up to fight Lomachenko. Kell Brook jumping up to fight Golovkin. Amir Khan jumping up to fight Canelo. Mikey Garcia jumping up to fight Errol Spence. Haven't been a fan of that type of thing. But again, damn, I guess if you were to extend it, I mean, we might all regret it later. Be like, yeah, we knew that was a bad idea. But there is that part of me that is intrigued by Terrence Crawford going up to fight Canelo. Now, maybe Terrence Crawford is just looking at it like, yeah, I know this is probably a fight that I can't win, but the money's going to be crazy. Maybe that is the calculation, but maybe Crawford actually thinks that he could beat Canelo. Maybe he does, So, but okay, that fight aside, because again, I would want to see Canelo versus Crawford. That fight aside, I feel like it has to be Canelo versus David Benavidez, because I suspected that Canelo was waiting David Benavidez out and waiting for David Benavidez to no longer be able to make 168 or to just decide to move up to 175 light heavyweight. I suspected that was what was going into it, because otherwise you look at that matchup and you say, well, the longer you wait, the worse it's going to be for you, Canelo, right? So the only other thing that can make sense, because I'm starting to be kind of convinced now, maybe Canelo like shocks us all and picks David Benavidez, and we're gonna get into that reported PBC offer to Canelo. If you believe David Benavidez's manager, he said that they offered Canelo $55 million to fight David Benavidez. If that's true and Canelo still turns it down, then it's clear he just wants no part of David Benavidez, right? Like, could y'all agree with that? Like, it would be clear. And I'm starting to see even like the biggest Canelo fans, not the biggest Canelo fans, because I feel like there's almost nothing that can get them to criticize Canelo. And that goes for any fighter's biggest fans, right? There's some fans of just about every superstar fighter that fighter could do no wrong. Like, I could be a big Gervonta Davis fan and still not be satisfied with his fight-by-fight selections. You know what I mean? I think I saw Contender Boxing Regime, just acknowledge that. He said, I'm a huge Gervonta Davis fan, but I'm not a fan of how he's moving. I'm a fan of how Devin Haney's moving. You know what I mean? So if Canelo doesn't fight Benavidez and Benavidez goes up to 175 and they did offer Canelo that $55 million, that tells us all we need to know about Canelo's appetite for fighting somebody like David Benavidez, which will be a damn shame in terms of boxing history and the way that history will look at Canelo for not taking that fight. You know what I mean? And look, and I'm trying to think of what the equivalent would be for, you could name a superstar fighter. There's always that one that got away, that fight that should have happened and should have happened at a specific time. And because it didn't happen, it's always kind of like a side eye. It's like, yeah, but damn, you didn't do that. For me, one of the times, like, I'm a huge Floyd Mayweather fan. I wanted to see him fight Miguel Cotto in a certain period of time. There was a time where Cotto was at 147 and he was cooking. And it was like, damn, how would he do against Floyd? And Floyd didn't take that fight until a few years later, until Cotto got beaten beaten up brutally at the hands of Margarito. And then, obviously there's Floyd Mayweather against Manny Pacquiao. That fight should have happened a few years sooner. It should have. And maybe Floyd would have won it then. Maybe, maybe not. I tend to think that he would have, but I would have loved to have seen it when he, before Manny Pacquiao got his lights put out by Juan Manuel Marquez in their fourth fight. You know what I mean? I would have loved to have seen that. Canelo not fighting Benavidez in this window of time will not age well for Canelo. It just won't. And it's for the whole boxing world to see. We're all looking at Canelo intently like, damn, who is he going to fight? And again, for me, if I'm taking Canelo at his word, it's not Jaime Munguia. So if it's not Munguia, and then we just saw, I'm sure you guys saw, well, okay, David Benavidez, if you didn't see, there was a report that he is going up and he has agreed to fight Alexander Gvozdyk, the former WBC light heavyweight champ. That was the guy Beterbiev beat to unify the Beterbiev's IBF with Gvozdyk's WBC light heavyweight title. And Gvozdyk earned that belt by almost taking Adonis Stevenson's life, if you recall. Adonis Stevenson almost died in the hospital, and he was in bad shape for a long time. I think he's doing a bit better. I don't know if he's 100% recovered, but I don't think he's in a wheelchair anymore. I'm going to actually check up on that, see how Adonis Stevenson's been doing. But Gvozdyk, quality fighter, been out of the ring for like 3 years. He has since returned, basically after getting stopped by Beterbiev, Gvozdyk stepped out of the game, came back 3 years later, and has won 3 fights. He's fought 3 times he fought 3 times in 2023, and now it looks like David Benavidez will be going up to 175 to fight Gvozdyk, which is a huge bummer. Not that I hate the fight. I think that, Gvozdyk's quality, I never saw him as being like A+ fighter. I saw him as like a B+, A-. And I feel like if Adonis Stevenson was still in his prime, I would have picked Adonis Stevenson to beat Gvozdyk. But Adonis Stevenson, had trouble in his prior fight before Gvozdyk against Badu Jack. They fought to a draw, but watching that fight, Stevenson looked terribly gassed, and I thought Badu Jack might have done enough in the second half of the fight to take it. But Stevenson walked away from that fight with his light heavyweight title. So Benavidez agrees to I think they said that he signed to fight Gvozdyk, which if Canelo ends up taking that $55 million and agreeing to fight Benavidez, do they then are they contractually, somebody's going to have to pay Gvozdyk is what I'm trying to get at. I don't think you could just sign to something and say, well, I'm going in that direction without breaking the opponent off or the guy that you contractually agreed to a fight with by, you got to pay him something. And I'm sure that the powers that be would do what they need to do financially to make that happen if Canelo agrees. But again, I'm wondering whether that 55 mil is real or if that is just Benavidez's frustrated management saying whatever they want to say at this point, because it appears that Canelo is just not interested in fighting the other best guy at 168, But if it's not Benavidez, Canelo posted on his IG story, it was a picture of like a poker table with a bunch of chips on the table, and it said Omaha High. And it was cryptic, of course. I usually don't even like talking about these things because, it's just a lot of guesswork and it's a lot of speculation. But Canelo posted that with an emoji laughing face next to it. What would be the point in even posting that if you're not going to fight that guy? Unless you're just trolling. But if you're just trolling, who are you trolling? Like, you're not trolling the guys who want to see you fight Benavidez? Are you just trolling the guys who have intrigue and wanting to see you fight Terrence Crawford? And, who at this point wants Canelo to pick Jermall Charlo? I did see a few votes in that little poll that I put out. I want to know who makes up that 3 to 5% who want to see Canelo versus Jermall Charlo next. And it kind of sucks because I'm a Jermall Charlo fan. Hell, I'm a Jermall Charlo fan. But Jermall Charlo fighting Canelo went down so badly that it impacted any appetite that we have for Canelo versus Jermall Charlo. Now, Jermall did a lot of this to himself by being out of the ring for 2.5 years, right? And then he didn't look great in his return fight against Jose Benavidez Jr. he didn't look terrible. But Jose Benavidez, was a 147 guy who went up to 154, didn't look great, and lost to Danny Garcia. He fought to like a draw against somebody else, I think at 154. Then went up to fight Jamal Charlo at a catch weight that was above middleweight. And then you want to go from that. And again, not looking great. Like Jamal Charlo got hit a lot in that fight. Again, it was against a blown up welterweight, blown up 154 guy, but he got hit a lot. The Jamal Charlo I remember was very sound defensively. The only guy I remember really breaking Jamal Charlo off with a significant amount of power shots was Matt Korobov. And he was like a southpaw. And it took Jamal Charlo several rounds to figure that guy out. But, what would make that extremely frustrating if Canelo were to pick Jamal Charlo is the fact that I can only speak for myself. I wanted to see Canelo versus Charlo from 2015 to 2019, 2020, basically up until the time Jamal Charlo fought Derevianchenko, even if he was still a middleweight and Canelo had been, was up at one. Well, technically Canelo wasn't yet up at 168. He had fought at 168 against Rocky Fielding, and he had fought against Kovalev at 175. That was late 2019. But technically, at the time Jamal Charlo fought Derevianchenko, Canelo hadn't yet fought Callum Smith until later on, like a few months later. And then Canelo stomped through 168 minus David Benavidez. So from 2015 to 2020, Canelo versus Jamal Charlo was a very attractive fight. And you want to pick now, 2024, and fight this version of Jamal Charlo, who's only one fight back. That would be like fighting Tyson Fury after he blew up to 300 and something pounds and came back and was fighting like Suffer Safari and guys like that. That would be like fighting Tyson Fury at that exact moment. Deontay Wilder at least waited 2 tune-up fights before fighting Tyson Fury. So yeah, that would be a pretty shameful opponent selection for Canelo to fight Jamal Charlo after fighting Jermell Charlo, and that being the result of that, and then fighting Jamal Charlo at this stage. For at least let Jamal Charlo get another fight or two under his belt to shake some more of the rust off. By the way, I saw like a really funny meme. I'm not going to try to reenact what the meme was, but it was basically it was Benjamin Tucker who sent it to me in a boxing chat, text chat that we have, and he was basically, it was a meme about Jamal Charlo's reaction to Al Heyman after Al Heyman reportedly, or PBC, was basically saying, no, we're only going to give you this money, Canelo, if you fight Munguia, because we're not going to pay for this, Canelo versus Jamal Charlo fight. And like in the meme, it was, what movie was that? Ben, let me know what movie that was. But it was a movie with Bow Wow, and the other actor, this was the co-star of the movie, was in Bow Wow's face. Bow Wow was like looking away with his arms folded, and the guy was like, he's like, I can't eat, I'm broke, and you have the power to change that. And that was basically supposed to be Jamal Charlo's reaction to Al Heyman, kind of, pissing on the idea of Canelo versus Jamal Charlo. Again, I don't want Canelo versus Jamal Charlo, but I'm sure Jamal Charlo wants Canelo versus Jamal Charlo. Yeah, that would be a lottery ticket. Oh, thank you, Vinny. Yeah, so that was the movie. All right. Yeah, but that was like a funny meme. But I do not want to see Canelo fight Jamal Charlo, and I think that would be a big stinker if Canelo chooses that as his next opponent. And again, every time I want to revisit, well, Canelo versus Munguia, that would be like the third best opponent, right? At least out of the names that have been mentioned after Benavidez. Well, it would technically be, I think we would rather see like David Morrell Jr. or somebody like that, but he's not going to fight David Morrell. Too little name recognition. And I can understand that. Same thing with Christian Mabili. He's looking really good at 168. Canelo, I would be shocked if he fights Christian Mabili next. Not to say that Canelo doesn't win, but it's almost like from a name recognition standpoint, who is Christian Mabili, right? So Munguia, out of the few that are being mentioned, is the third best opponent. But again, it just points back to why not one or two? David Benavidez is on PBC. Canelo, at least, as far as we know, was signed. He had signed that 3-fight deal. I don't know if there were clauses that Canelo can use to get out of the contract, but David Benavidez is there. Canelo's there. Terrence Crawford can be there. He's kind of if he's not on PBC, he's kind of close to being a free agent, right? And again, Canelo said he's not fighting a Mexican opponent next, so it's not going to be Jaime Munguia. Edgar Berlanga, if Canelo waits for Berlanga to look good against Patrick McCrory, and by the way, I just this morning, I just dropped a video previewing Edgar Berlanga versus Patrick McCrory, who is a bit of a power puncher, but I think that he might be tailor-made for Berlanga. If Canelo is waiting for Berlanga to fight McCrory to then announce that is your next opponent, I would be about as disappointed as I would be if they announced Canelo versus Jamal Charlo. Not quite, because at least Berlanga is a 168 guy, but close. And I would probably favor Jamal Charlo. If he were to fight Berlanga, if Jamal Charlo looks even a little bit better than he looked against Jose Benavidez Jr., I think Jamal Charlo could beat Edgar Berlanga. So yeah, that fight to me would suck as well. Berlanga needs to get in the ring with one of these, top 8 to top 12, 168 guys before landing getting the lottery ticket, if you will, against Canelo Alvarez. Let me get to some of what you guys are saying. Franco, okay, let's see. Franco said, "Well, I don't understand." From Michael Benson's, was the offer for Canelo to face Benavidez for September or May? That's a good question. He didn't specify. I don't know what that offer was for exactly. I would assume I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I hope that it's for May, because if Canelo doesn't fight him now and Benavidez goes up to 175 and then comes back down to 168, I don't like Benavidez coming back down in weight to make a weight limit that I'm still shocked at how he even weighs in at 168 for these fights. You know what I mean? I wouldn't like him to go up to 175 then come back down. So I hope it was for May. Crawford wants a payday. Yeah, I agree. Franco H. The ideal fight is Canelo versus Benavidez. There's no other fight to make. Yeah, it's got to be one of those two. Let's see. Yeah, Subswells. That was a hilarious scene. Heck yeah, MAW. Thank you for coming through. David Eister's in the house. Who would I rank in order? A quick ranking between Janibek, Adames, and Munguia. Well, okay, so Munguia's at 168 now, but just generally, I would say Janibek, Munguia, Adames. Yeah, I would say Janibek, Munguia, Adames. I like Adames too, but Munguia has impressed me. I mean, Munguia impressed me back when he was fighting Liam Smith and Saddam Ali. It's just that his fight-by-fight schedule was just, it was about as bad as Edgar Berlanga's recent one. You know what I mean? But you could argue it might have even been worse. And I think that Munguia had proven to be better than Berlanga had been after those 16 first-round knockouts in a row. It's mostly just been Munguia's schedule that's kind of sucked. But I think that he's a good fighter, a really good fighter. He's not a great defender, but I think that he's even getting better from a skill, from a technical standpoint. But I would still put Janibek above him. Now, if Janibek were to go up and try to fight Munguia at 168, I don't know how that goes for Janibek. I just want to see Janibek fight an opponent that matters. To this day, who's his best opponent been? Denzel Bentley? I feel like that's been Janibek's best opponent so far. Franco said, in his opinion, it would be Janibek, Munguia, and then Adames. Okay, yeah, same. Let's see. David Eiser said Munguia is on a good run. I just don't like how he avoided Janibek. Well, I mean, Munguia seemed to have avoided a few good fighters. Like, it looked like Jamal Charlo versus Munguia was close to being made. It looked like Munguia versus Demetrius Andrade for Andrade's WBO middleweight title was in play. but Munguia, Golden Boy, they just went in other directions and they just fought one lesser name after another, after another, after. I mean, you look at that stretch. There were about six uninspired opponents, and I'll throw Gabriel Rosado's name in there because he really never belonged. He was a pretty good 160 guy, never a good 168 guy, and he was so post prime. But his shocking knockout over Bektemir Melikuziev kind of extended Munguia's shelf life, or not Munguia's shelf life, but Rosado's shelf life, where it earned him another 3 or 4 beatings, to be honest. J.O. Felony, David Iser, always dropping the hip hop reference. Yeah, San Diego's finest. I'm too sexy for my mother. Hood. I'm too sexy for my mother. Low rider. Yeah, and he had some other ones too. Yeah. I actually, back in the day, I opened for J.O. Felony back when I was in a hip hop crew. Opened up for him. I forgot which venue this was. It might have been the House of Blues in Anaheim. But yeah, very familiar with J.O. Felony. San Diego gets down too. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for coming through in this very impromptu live chat. I want to get back on doing this at least weekly. I haven't been as freed up in those time slots, and I don't want to do like an early afternoon live chat unless it's on a weekend. I'd be down to do a weekend early afternoon live chat. But I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. It either what I'll do is, instead of Tuesday, because I used to do Tuesday weeklies, I'm going to do either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, but I want to hit one of those 3 days every week. I'm trying to make that the thing. You know what I mean? And it'll be around this time, around 6 o'clock p.m. But I do want to make those a lot more frequent. I always just have a ton of fun talking with y'all, like in a live setting. I like doing the previews and recaps and stuff as well. But the live chat, I get to see what you guys are saying in the moment, and just respond to it in the moment or a few minutes later sometimes, right? Jay Foreman said, Oscar wants that Canelo fight for Munguia. You damn right he does. He's improving and his last performance was impressive. I agree. Will Canelo work with Oscar again? It's like, this is the thing. For Canelo to choose Munguia, he's going to have to go against what he said about fighting a Mexican, right? He's got to go against that. He's got to work with Golden Boy, and he's got to work cross promotion while he's at PBC and work with another promoter to make that happen. It just seems like he's got to do so much twisting and turning to make a Munguia fight. Whereas, hey, David Benavidez is right there. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't feel it. I don't feel it. Thoughts on Blue Blood Sports TV? Salute. Yeah, I like Blue Blood Sports TV. His frequency in terms of how many videos he posts, it's relentless. Like, he'll do like 4 to 6 videos a day. Look, I like talk. He'll do more of the speculative talk than I will. I also like his interviews. I like when he has an actual boxer, which I do want to start getting into. I do want that to be one thing in 2024. I want to interview trainers, fighters, and promoters if I could, get their attention and bring them on. I would probably start off with some of the lesser, like if I could get like an interview with Lou DiBella, that'd be great, right? And then work my way from there. Not to say that Lou ain't the man, you know what I mean? I like Lou DiBella, but to get an Eddie Hearn, I'm sure you got to go through the Lou DiBellas, Not that there's only one Lou DiBella, but Blue Blood Sports TV, I like that as a channel. He's got a ton of followers. I'll say that. He'll start commenting while he's at the fight. So I've seen him like with masks on when it was like the COVID, era when everybody was masked, and he would pull the mask down and start talking and then put it back up. But I like to fast forward through like the salutes, you know what I mean? Because it's hella salutes that you go through before you get to the content. And one thing that I'm working on myself, because I'm trying to, find the balance between, okay, we'll go live chat and then, talk with y'all and then get back to the script and then back and forth. Blue Blood will spend like literally like a 3 minutes with salutes. You know what I mean? And I mean, to be fair, there are that many people in the live chat to salute. But, I like some of his content. It's a mix between what's actually happening And again, the speculative stuff, the stuff that is like, if somebody tweets something, okay, let me react to that. If somebody posts something, or this, they're talking about this fight, or somebody's throwing shade at somebody else, let me react to that in the moment. I'm reacting to this one because, once something reaches like a Mike Coppinger or a Michael Benson or the fighter themselves, or a fighter who usually doesn't tweet a lot of trolling stuff. Like, I wouldn't do like a Raleigh Romero saying this, or even a Tank Davis tweeting and deleting. I wouldn't comment on that. Canelo picks his spots. And so for him to do that Omaha high in the wake of the David Benavidez, manager saying that they offered $55 million, which was in the wake of Canelo holding a press conference to basically not even announce who his opponent is, just to say, Azteca TV doesn't have to pay pay-per-view for my fights. I want to make it, free for my countrymen, and I'm not fighting a Mexican. That's all he basically wanted to announce during his press conference. It was just like a chain of events that it really increased the amount of chaos that is surrounding who his next opponent was going to be. And, I get it from a marketing standpoint, because look, it's got us all talking about it. Canelo is kind of working us like he's like a conductor right now. And, the orchestra is just, this side of the orchestra is saying this, that side of the orchestra is playing that. And Canelo is just doing that. You know what I mean? I feel like that's what's going on right now. And, power to him if those are the strings that he wants to pull. But at some point he's going to have to announce an opponent. That's all I'm saying. But with Canelo, Boxing Wave, that's a channel I really like. He mentioned that this is a little bit reminiscent on when LeBron James was about to announce whether he was going to stay with the Cleveland Cavaliers or go elsewhere. And that's when he announced that he was taking his talents to South Beach to join the Miami Heat. And all eyes on the boxing world were watching, LeBron James. Even in the non-boxing world, everybody was watching, what is LeBron James going to do? Canelo's press conference was a milder version of that, but it's about as close as you could get to that right now in the boxing environment. So yeah, Canelo is definitely increasing the interest in his next fight. I just don't see him going through this whole process of making people speculate and then landing on a Jermall Charlo or even an Edgar Berlanga, Jaime Munguia. Well, again, it can't be Munguia if he's holding true to his word. So let's just throw that out. I'm going to take him at his word. I don't see him landing on a Jermall Charlo, even though it seems like if you're reading the tea leaves and hearing what reportedly PBC is trying to do and saying that they're going to pay for a Munguia fight, but not a Jermall Charlo fight, but Canelo is insisting on Jermall Charlo, it seems. And then David Benavidez going up to light heavyweight. I wouldn't be shocked if Canelo picks either Terrence Crawford or surprises us and picks David Benavidez. Maybe he's just stringing us along to then make the splash just to throw the middle fingers up at us and say, what? Maybe that's what he's doing. I hope as a boxing fan that he's either doing that or that he announces the Terrence Crawford fight. Yeah, thank you. MAW, smash the like button. Yes, Sub Swoles. Whenever I do that, yeah, damn right. Yeah, heck yeah. I appreciate that. Cameraman / producer / advisor, all that. Yeah, same thing. Yeah, hell yeah. Benji said Oscar never knows when he has a Zurdo Ramirez on his hands. He seems to be more aggressive with Ryan Garcia than any of his other fighters. Yeah, he's just kind of running Ryan Garcia into like walls. You know what I mean? Like I got this new toy. Let me just see how it's like a race car where you like rewind. You just back it up so then it just zooms forward into like a brick wall. Let's see. Even though he supposedly didn't want the Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight, Virgil Ortiz, I hope he gets his health in order. He's had the one comeback fight. I just really wish he was still at 147, but it just doesn't seem like it's a physical possibility. Jay Foreman, I have AJ winning. Do I have him KOing Ngannou? Yeah, I have him stopping Ngannou. But damn, AJ is a tepid kind of, reluctant fighter. And it seems like even though Ngannou isn't a boxer, doesn't it seem like there's more danger moment by moment fighting Ngannou than there was fighting Otto Wallin, even though Otto Wallin is a boxer and a very good boxer. Doesn't it seem like that element of danger is just there with the Ngannou fight? Like, knowing how AJ approaches fights, or at least how he's approached fights in the past few years, ever since the Andy Ruiz fight, or some will even say since the Vladimir Klitschko fight, like, he's like measured, right? So is he going to just look for those spots to jab Ngannou to the belly, right hand to the belly, and then like, is he going to go tit for tat, or is he going to like let him know early, pop? Yeah, that's what's happening today. Pop. Is it going to be one of those affairs? I kind of feel like it's going to be more of the first, but he's going to have to explode sometime, and when he explodes, Ngannou's going to try to counter. So that's going to be intriguing. Yes, I am. I'm going to do a full preview and everything as we near the fight date, but my gut instinct is AJ via stoppage over Ngannou. But Ngannou's got a chin, man. You're going to have to, but AJ's got hands, AJ hits very, very, very hard. Heart of Broward County is in the house. What y'all know about Broward County, Florida? One of my best friends lives out in Broward County. He lives in Fort Lauderdale. Ventru, yeah. Let's see. I thought Canelo said in an interview that he has nothing to gain but everything to lose fighting Crawford. Yeah, he did say that. And Crawford also said, they have divisions and weight classes for a reason. But money talks, you know what I mean? Maybe Canelo can warm up to the idea, and maybe Crawford feels inspired to try to exceed maybe his own expectations. I don't know. But, if Canelo really doesn't want to fight, Crawford, and doesn't want to fight Munguia or any Mexican fighter for that matter, that only leaves a few guys. I just hope it's not Jamal Charlo. Adames would be a decent fight, but Dominican guys are, well, it depends on who was the last most marketable or Dominican fighter? There just aren't a ton of top tier Dominican fighters. Guzman, wasn't he was Dominican, right? Johan Guzman, he was pretty good. Edwin de los Santos is Dominican as well. Adames, I just feel like he's kind of getting shafted right now because he's been holding on to that lesser, like that interim WBC middleweight champ status for so long. And he's beaten pretty good fighters, beat Derevianchenko. He stopped Montiel. Juan Macias Montiel was the guy that Jamal Charlo kind of struggled with in his last fight before the long layoff. So, I think, yeah, I just hope Adames gets a meaningful fight. Let's see. Virgilio Perez in the house. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming through. Heart of Broward County said, Ngannou by KO easy, 8 rounds or under. Wow. Whoa. I mean, if you truly believe that, dog, you can make a killing on this fight. If you even the non the straight up to win odds heavily favor AJ. So if you're that convinced that Ngannou's gonna put it on AJ like that, if I felt that strongly towards it, I would put a little something on that. Given the odds, Yeah, Janibek versus Adames, that is the fight to make in the division. Yeah, that is the fight to make. But promotionally, I could just see Bob Arum. You want me to do what? For how much? Go yourself. I can see, I can see Bob Arum saying it. It's not happening, kid. I wish it could and would. I mean, that's divisionally, it's a fight that matters, Otherwise, we just keep on seeing each guy fight lesser fighters. Like, I don't want to see Janibek fight any other guy who did he fight last? Like, it was Steven Butler, who's going to be fighting Steve Rolls next. Yeah, I don't want to see any more, C, D level fighters, opponents, for Janibek. Alam Hanallah. Jay Foreman said, I should do a poll of how many people think that Usyk versus Fury would go ahead. One thing about that fight, and I am still skeptical, but I don't think it was a fake cut. I don't have any I don't have any feelings towards any conspiracy in terms of that cut happening and that, injury being legit. I do worry that the turnaround time is too fast. I almost feel like Allah Sheikh, His Excellency Allah Sheikh is kind of rushing them to the ring a little too quickly. I mean, a cut takes a while to heal, and if you listen to major cutmen in the sport saying that that cut should take about 3 months before you could get back into sparring. So how are you going to make the fight 4 months from the time that the injury occurred? Like, is Fury not going to spar until like 3 weeks before the fight? That doesn't make any sense. So I do worry about that. David Asher said, I think both Janabek and Adames would probably beat Munguia. But you know what? I mean, Munguia has been out of the division for like a few fights now. So, a year, 2 years ago, I was looking at Munguia solely as a middleweight. Now, in my head, I perceive him as a 168 guy, to where I don't even think he could get back to 160 if he tried. Richardson Hitchens fighting on April 6th. Yeah, I'll definitely do a video on that for sure. Teofimo DJ, thank you for coming through. Teofimo Lopez, all-star or bust? All-star with some bust qualities. With Teo, it's interesting because he wants to please. He does want to please the crowd. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fought Lomachenko. He wouldn't have fought Josh Taylor. I think he wants to make the big fights, and he wants to make a splash. I don't think he expected Jermaine Ortiz to bring that style to the ring. Did any of us expect Jermaine Ortiz to get in the ring and look like, I don't know, fill in the blank, with a fighter who just moved around the ring for like most of the fight? Now, I thought that it was an effective strategy. I thought Jermaine Ortiz might have pulled it off, but I wouldn't call Teo a bust. I mean, look, he's only in his mid-20s. I have more concern over his mental wherewithal than I do his abilities or skills or performances, just fight over fight. Look, Sandro Martin has proven to be a guy who can make a lot of people look bad or beat them. Jermaine Ortiz is a talented guy to begin with. Now you've got to chase this talented guy around the ring, and now you only exchange with this talented and fast guy when he wants to set and fire. That's tough. Imagine having to like track somebody down. Now, some people could cut the ring off better than Teo can, but imagine having a move like that, and then you're only able to really exchange when the guy just decides stop moving and fire. That's tough, and that's frustrating. So, Teo kind of has a pattern of having impressive fight, non-impressive fight. Impressive fight because, right before he knocked out Richard Comey, he had that fight against Nakatani. Didn't look great. After beating Lomachenko, he lost to Kambosos and then looked pretty bad against Sandor Martin, and then did that against Josh Taylor. Granted, I don't think Josh Taylor is the same guy who fought Regis Prograis. I think his legs look every bit of however old he is, or even older. You know what I mean? Just seems like his back was getting sore. Like he looked like an older fighter in there in the second half of the fight. But yeah, Teofimo Lopez is an all-star. And when he's really clicking on all cylinders, he's in it against anybody, I think. Pablo B. Yeah, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming through. David Eister, thanks again. I want to just say thank y'all. Again, I hope to do this again in about a week, but I just had to hop on. I know that it was late notice. I just saw that, again, the Canelo shenanigans going down, and I saw that Tank Davis versus Frank Martin was made. So if you didn't catch that, that's like the first half of this video. We talked ad nauseum about that one. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys once again. David Eister, Pablo B. Oh, again, I dropped the Berlanga versus McCrory preview, and I dropped a recent reaction to Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia being made. And I dropped another kind of Canelo, the state of play with Canelo video about a week ago. And I reacted to the Yoshaki Foster Knight and the Jojo Diaz fight. And there were a couple more in that video, but it's a reaction to all the major fights that took place. Mauricio Lara returning to the ring and escaping with a draw. There were a few fights that I covered in that one. Nash Shinga's revenge, his rematch against Curiel. Damn, that was a great fight. Thank you, Ventru. Yeah, I appreciate that. Omar Garcia, thank you for coming through. Pablo B, David Eister, DJ, Jay Foreman, Heart of Broward County, Virgilio Perez, Benjamin Tucker, Sup Swoles, MAW, Franco H, Inner G, yeah, Until next time, y'all. Whoopee. Yeah, thank you for coming through. Yeah, have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the fights this weekend. I know it's kind of a light week. There's also a Junto Nakatani fight coming up. He's going to be fighting Santiago Alejandro, I believe. Santiago, the guy who beat Nonito Donaire last. Junto Nakatani, who had one of the knockouts of the year two fights ago against Andrew Maloney, is going up in weight to try to win a belt in his third division against Alejandro Santiago. So yeah, tune into that one. That one's taking place Saturday morning, but it's happening in Japan. So it's going to be super early in the morning. On the West Coast, it's going to be like the main event is going to be like at 4:00 in the morning or 3:30 in the morning, something like that. So that's going to be super early Saturday. And then later on Saturday night, you've got Berlanga versus McCrory. But yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, once again. Yeah, Alberto Lopez. That's going to be one of my next previews. Luis Alberto Lopez. Always like seeing him fight with his weird style. But yeah, thanks again, y'all. Until next time, I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.